Hey, it's Emily Duff, and this is On the Record. On the Record is a look back at some of the songs that I consider to be important that I've written over the past decade. In this episode, we're going to look at my album, Maybe in the Morning.
He's got a box of space, whole bunch of bruising trays.
Maybe in the Morning was the record that took it to the next level. It was recorded in 2016 and produced again by Craig Bishop, and this time we recorded it in Muscle Shoals, Alabama at the legendary Fame Studios, with additional overdubs in New York City at the Cutting Room, John Kilgore Sound, and John Leventhal and Roseanne Cash's home studio. Now, if you remember in episode 1, when I told you that Craig had been working with another band, he had recorded their record in Muscle Shoals at Fame. When he came back, one of the first things he said to me was, "You need to record here." Before I go into how the record was made and who played on the record, I have to say that this was the first time I had ever had an executive producer. And if it wasn't for Mark Baker, this record never would have gotten made. At this point, I had a band, but I had lost my drummer. So we decided that we were going to work with a drummer named Marco Giavino, a very good friend of Craig's. However, on the drive down to Muscle Shoals, Marco called because he was in the hospital with food poisoning. The next morning, we found out that Marco definitely couldn't make it. So we had to think real quick. We got Kenny Soul on a plane, picked him up at the airport, and that's how Kenny got on the recording, and he's been my drummer ever since.
Don't talk about it.
Another interesting part about this was that Charlie Giordano had become a part of the band on accordion. But unfortunately, Charlie couldn't make the gig down in Muscle Shoals either, because at the last minute, Bruce decided he was going back on tour, so Charlie had to go back into rehearsals for that. So we went down to Muscle Shoals without a keyboard player. So on a Sunday in January of 2016, Kenny, Scott, Skip, and I, with Craig and Mark, loaded into Fame and met John Gifford III, our engineer, and Spencer Coates, our assistant engineer, to start work on what was going to be Maybe in the Morning.
That's when diamonds ain't forever.
It was an opportunity for me to really immerse myself in the music. It felt really, really exciting and really different, and my one job was to make this record and make it the best that I could.
Vows take time.
Now, we set up in the room live. I was in a booth, Kenny was in the main room, Skip was in a booth, and Scott was baffled in the room. We tracked for 3 days, and we wound up with 17 songs, 12 of which wound up on the record, and I'm really proud of them. Hypnotizing Chickens, Please Don't Do Me Dirty, Maybe in the Morning, Bomp Bomp, Don't, Every Time I Go to Harlem, Daddy's Drunk Again, Listen to Mama, Alabama, Diamonds, Needle Drop Blues, and Somebody on Sunday. This group of songs really belonged in Muscle Shoals. Mark Baker knew that, Craig Bishop knew that, I think we all knew that. I could do a deep dive on every single song on this record. However, my spotlight track on my 2017 release of Maybe in the Morning is Needle Drop Blues. It's a song about record collecting, and I put it on an album that I actually pressed vinyl to.
I'm spinning, roughed up and confused. No, not grinning. It's like I'm gonna lose. There ain't no winning. Hurry up and get used. I got them 33 and a third. Needle drop blue.
I love the lyrics, and I love the backup vocals by Venice Thomas and D-Train on this. It's a really fun song, it's a good time. And like I said, those vocals at the end, they'll make you happy. That'll get you up and dancing.
Needle drop blue. Needle drop blue. Needle drop blue. Needle drop blue.
Man, I love that song. I really do. Another really cool feature about Maybe in the Morning is that it's the first time I ever pressed vinyl. And this is very special, this vinyl, because the cover was done by Shelley Comelas. Mark Baker introduced me to Shelley, and it's a beautiful painting. And she had an idea for it after she heard the record. I think it's absolutely beautiful, and the original painting hangs on my wall in my house. I love it. Now, the back of this record was shot by photographer Charles Chesler. And this was the first time I worked with Charles. And I've worked with Charles many times since. Like I said, we didn't have Charlie with us, so we couldn't do any keyboard parts. But John Gifford said, "That's okay, I'll call Clayton Ivey." And I didn't know who Clayton Ivey was, so I didn't know what to expect. And I walked into the studio. I said, "Hey Clayton, you're gonna be playing to my scratch vocals today. Sorry about that." And he said to me, "That's okay. I remember when we cut I Say a Little Prayer for You with Aretha." I said, "Oh, you were on that session." He said, "Oh yeah, I had cans on my head and Aretha singing live in my ears, and I just about froze." We went into Studio A, and he sits down at the Whirly and he says, "Oh, this is Spooner's piano. This is the piano I played on Patches with Clarence Carter." And these are songs that I grew up with that really made me want to be a songwriter. Just being in the room with a man like that was huge to me. The fact that he wound up playing on my record really, really meant a lot to me. Maybe in the Morning is loaded with great musicians, great players, great singers. The core band being Skip and Kenny and Scott and myself, and then Clayton, Ivey. We did eventually wind up doing some overdubs in New York. Charlie got on the record. Jonathan Gregg got on the record. David Weiss played on Maybe in the Morning and on Hypnotizing Chickens, another great guitar player. Venice Thomas, Tabitha Fair, James Williams, D-Train, they all sing on the record. Cheryl Marshall sings on the record. Lisa Lowell sings on the record. So many incredible musicians. Just like Go Tell Your Friends, Craig Bishop mixed this record with his famous ears. And this was the first record that I got to work with Fred Kevorkian on as a mastering engineer. And that was really exciting for me too. Making Maybe in the Morning was an incredible experience at the legendary Fame Studios, and it remains to this day one of my favorite records. As a matter of fact, it received 5 stars in some magazines, and I'm very proud of that. Now, if you'd like to purchase Maybe in the Morning, you can still do so exclusively at Bandcamp, and that's how you support independent artists. You can even get it on 180-gram vinyl with this beautiful artwork. I wish you would. Thanks for hanging out with me. This is Emily Duff, on the record.